Saying that you need to move your story forward may seem unnecessary. After all, what is a story if it isn't moving along? But believe it or not, it needs saying. Too often, writers forget that everything is about moving your story forward. Your characters, your plot, the rising action, the narration, the dialogue, even the setting. Moving your story forward is so essential to your story's success that if you simply stop moving it forward, it would stop being a story and become a premature end to an unfinished idea. Time for another of my little tales. Somewhere in the heart of a thriving modern city, there was a young woman named Alexis Laren, better known as Lexi to her close friends. Now, Lexi had recently moved into a select apartment complex that catered exclusively to single men and women. The only clause for a potential tenant was that once their renter was no longer single, he or she would have 30 days to vacate the property. Everyone knew everyone at the small complex of 46 apartments. Life there was so good that although many of the tenants dated one another, none would make a commitment that would have them looking elsewhere for a home. But the day Lexi Laren moved into the second floor corner unit, several of the men experienced that love at first sight syndrome. Yes, the men were smitten. Two in particular. Cole and Diego had been friends since they both moved into the apartment complex 3 years earlier and had systematically dated almost every woman that had moved in. They had gotten so prolific at dating inside the complex grounds, they began finding challenging methods of beating the other at winning the heart or at least the attention of a new tenant. Lexi was to be no different. From the moment they had laid eyes on her, they went about trying to outdo each other. Because of her unique and sexy look, as well as her knack for hindering each and every one of their attempts at a tryst with her, they each vowed to do whatever it took to win her affections. It turns out Lexi quite enjoyed the attention and enjoyed even more pitting one friend against the other. She also found them both quite the catch and confessed this alluringly while assuring the enchanted duo that she would date exclusively the undeniable and obvious winner. The apartment complex, in order to help its tenants find love, had put in a full bar on the first floor. Actually, management's plan was to allow them to get drunk, fall in love, and break their lease so their apartment could be re rented for more money. So, anyway, one evening after spending countless nights plotting against each other, they concluded that as pretty and alluring as Lexi was, she wasn't worth the continued aggravation. Besides, thanks to the bar, tenants were breaking their lease and moving out each and every month. Since the bar was a self serve setup, Diego grabbed the bottle of whiskey that Cole suggested and poured the drinks while Cole filled a container with ice. Diego quickly drank his first drink while Cole sipped his slowly. When he was done, Diego made a couple more drinks. Cole put in the ice and again slowly sipped his drink while Diego drank his quickly. This went on for the next three drinks, with Cole sipping his slowly and Diego drinking his quickly. They both then staggered out of the bar holding each other up. The next morning, Cole was found dead in his apartment. He had been poisoned the night before by Diego. How? They both drank the exact same amount of drinks from the same bottle of whiskey, yet Diego was perfectly fine. Today, I'll explain what I mean by moving your story forward, and then I'll tell you how Diego found a way to poison Cole without poisoning himself. Let's start with your characters. In earlier videos, I talked about the importance of your main and secondary characters, and choosing the right character is one of the most important parts of a story. And that's because, like I've mentioned before, all of your secondary characters have one main job, and that is to move your main character, your protagonist, forward in your story, which in turn moves your story forward. You've heard me say this before, but they actually have no other purpose. Everything your characters do is for the purpose of moving your story forward. And if you discover they are failing in their efforts, then you need to decide if they actually have a place in your story. Imagine what it would be like to have a story that wasn't moving forward. For example, your protagonist gets locked in a room and can't get out. At this point, a secondary character would be introduced into the story to help move the story forward by, I don't know, unlocking the door and allowing the protagonist to escape, or maybe offering some necessary information that would lead to the protagonist's release, maybe telling them where a hidden key is or something. Either way, by assisting the protagonist, the secondary character helps to move the story forward. Without the assistance of that secondary character, the protagonist would likely remain stuck in that room, preventing the story from moving forward. Consequently, your reader would lose the interest to keep reading. And let's face it, the main reason for writing a story is so it can be read. In the case of the plot, to have a successful one, you need that plot to advance. The enjoyment of a good story requires the plot to take the reader on a sort of roller coaster ride by way of the rising action toward the climax of the story that is usually found at the end. For a story to move forward, several things need to occur. I touched on the importance of your characters intervening at an appropriate time to push your story forward. But also important is to avoid having your story become monotonous. You see, for a story to develop, it needs to continually offer the reader something more than it offered prior. If you remember, this is provided by the rising action of your story. It's important that, however exciting or alluring or passionate you made the last scene, the next scene needs to be a little more exciting or alluring or passionate. Then, the following scenes need to do the same, always increasing the tension and the excitement. This advancing climb of the rising action sets the tone, allowing your story to continually move forward, all the way to the climax. With our earlier example of your protagonist locked in the room, once she has escaped with the assistance of a secondary character, unless her escaping is the end of the story, it is merely an obstacle she has overcome on her way to the climax. Which means, as exciting or alluring or passionate the escaping from that room might have been, the next obstacle that your protagonist encounters must be more exciting or alluring or passionate. For example, your protagonist, with the help of a secondary character, has escaped from the room. She makes it to the front door of the house and finds it locked. While she is attempting to get the door open, she hears footsteps approaching. They are those of the men who first locked her in the room. As she struggles to get the door open, she can't help but to listen to the fast approaching footsteps. Tension builds during this next obstacle, creating a more exciting or alluring or passionate circumstance than the conflict she experienced when she was locked in the room. During this rising action, as your protagonist intensely makes her escape through the front door, her actions and those of the secondary characters, the men fast approaching, increase the excitement, allowing the story to move forward. Remember, your secondary characters are anybody and everyone who isn't your protagonist. Now, when it comes to your reason for moving your story forward, with almost any story that you write, it is to journey along that upward climb that is your rising action, to finally arrive at your big finish, your climax. From the start of your story and then throughout it, your goal as a writer is to bring your protagonist to the point of that climax, one exciting scene after another. If we use the example of our protagonist escaping from the house with the men chasing after her, from the time your protagonist first encountered these men, the story has been on an upward journey for her to achieve her freedom. Along her journey, she has overcome one obstacle after another, being chased by the men, being caught by the men, escaping the room, unlocking the front door, and escaping to the outside, being chased again by the men, and finally overcoming the men and attaining her freedom. This being what your story has been building toward, the climax. Let's examine a final example with your protagonist on her journey to freedom. With the men in hot pursuit, your protagonist finally gets the front door unlocked and races out of the house. Knowing that if she's caught and unlikely that she will be able to escape again, she puts all her efforts into making it to the safety of her family who are close by, searching for her. With the men almost close enough to grab hold of her, she gives her best effort to stay ahead of them. Then, turning a corner, she looks ahead and sees her family in the distance. With a burst of strength, she calls out to them. They hear. They see her running toward them. They see the men chasing behind her. Her two brothers and her father immediately run to her. The men see her family approaching and realize to continue the chase is futile and turn and run in the opposite direction. Your protagonist runs into the arms of her father while her two brothers run past her and give chase to the men. During the climax of this story, the brothers quickly catch the men, ending the threat to their sister, and after administering their own style of justice, the police are called and arrest the men who are then taken away. The main objective of your protagonist was to achieve her freedom. The entire story is about her journey in search of that freedom. The climax being the point where it is achieved. Everything that is introduced into your story, from your secondary characters to your plot with its rising action, is for your protagonist to achieve the goal she set out to realize, which she acquires at the moment of the climax of her journey. Moving your story forward is keeping your story going. And keeping your story going is keeping your readers reading. It doesn't matter if you're writing a thriller, like the one we just used in the example, or a romance story, or even a humorous one. The objective is always the same: to take your protagonist on a journey where she can achieve her goal with the assistance of secondary characters through a continued infusion of growing conflict and tension along the rising action of your story, to finally culminating it all together at the climax. With all of these influential and active elements working toward the same goal, they will help take your protagonist to her intended objective, and by doing so, move your story forward. And now, the ending to the story I call She Had Those Melting Eyes. Even though Diego said Lexi wasn't worth the aggravation, to him, she was definitely worth it. That's when he decided to do as she suggested and become the obvious winner. And the only way to be the obvious winner was to make sure Cole was dead. So, knowing that the bar was self serve, He arrived 30 minutes before his meeting with Cole and replaced the bag of ice in the freezer with a bag of ice he had already infused with slow-acting poison. Being friends with Cole for so long, he knew he liked to sip his drinks, giving the ice time to melt and poison his drink. Diego, on the other hand, drank his drink so fast the ice never had the chance to melt. Therefore, he never drank any of the poison. Thanks for watching, and if you found anything that I said beneficial to you in any way, hit that subscribe button because you never know. My next video might just be helpful too.